for the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peters, and now part of the VSIN family of podcasts. We've got an excellent podcast for you. We're going to be joined in segment number 2 by one of our good friends, Ben Stevens. He does such amazing work over here at VSIN with our weekend betting shows and so much more. He's getting set for the upcoming college football season as well. We're going to chat with him about what we're seeing with all these court cases that are going on, all these injunctions that are being had. Well, many of them are involving Big Ten teams. We're right now waiting on that ruling out there in the great state of California, so we're going to be chatting about that, and we're also going to be taking a look at just the Big Ten landscape in general, some of these teams that he's feeling bullish/bearish on. Here in segment number 1, we saw 17 players get granted a temporary injunction, allowing them for an extra year of eligibility, so we'll run down that, and we'll try to keep you guys straight on all these court cases that are going on. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways we'll fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GUnit_D1. Keep in mind, letters CM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. The other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated, and then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. I do beg with you and plead with you to send in these Twitter/X questions. Typically, we don't get this level of news here in late July and August, but here we are. So that has been absolutely amazing, but it might dry up a little bit sooner rather than later, so do be mindful of that. And if you're taking a look at college basketball right now, it is being ruled by court cases, as we saw a temporary injunction for 17 different players on Friday. That would be Jalen Washington, who was last with Vanderbilt, Brody Robinson, the main point guard over at Oakland. Now, Jack Broder was over at Carson Newman. I don't know if he's going to be playing at all. Olamide Ajaboy, hopefully I got that correct, from Tennessee Tech. Again, probably not going to see a lot of time, but Cameron Fenn's a 7-footer from South Dakota. We saw Daniel Igbaniwe over at St. Bonaventure, was really good over at Tennessee Tech a few seasons ago. Shondell Weaver, a guard for Texas. Jason Edwards from Providence, 10-plus point per game scorer. Zachary Davis didn't do a lot at Memphis, but I know someone could use. Terrence Gunyard of Duquesne. A.J. Storr looking to become the first player I could think of to play for 9 schools in 9 years. He had 4 different schools in high school. He's played for 4 different schools here in college. He's got eligibility again, apparently. Doug McDaniel over at Memphis. N.J. Benson of DePaul. Sam Alexis over at Indiana was really good at Chattanooga a few seasons ago. Jalen Johnson, long and winding road. He was at Radford last year. B.J. Edwards of SMU, and then Braxton Stecker for Southeast Missouri State. These are all guys, aside from maybe Broder from Carson Newman and maybe Ajaboy from Tennessee Tech, that they should all be commanding offers right now. Like, even if it's a mid-major team, like, that's 15 players out there in the market that many of these teams would want, like, especially South Dakota. If they could bring back Cameron Fenns, that would be big for them. For SMU, getting back B.J. Edwards would be big. Doug McDaniel, he's a little bit of a ball hog, but certainly there's going to be someone that wants him, so that is massive. And additionally, we saw this as well. A U.S. judge in Colorado has granted a class-wide preliminary injunction that requires the NCAA to declare all 2022 athletes eligible for a 5th year. This is according to, hopefully I get this Twitter/X correct, Sam Elrich. He was over there, he's working out there in Boise, Idaho, but yeah, we've got a lot that is going on right now. These rosters are going to be changing by the minute and by the day. Like, heck, I know UW Green Bay had a guy or two that is filing for an extra year of eligibility. This is wild and crazy. Most of these rosters have already been filled out, and most of these teams have spent their NIL money. LSU is right now licking their chops, and they are very, very excited, to say the least, and we've got a lot of wild and craziness that is happening in college basketball right now. We are seeing a long and winding road, so that is going to be interesting, to say the least. Again, a lot of players that I think are going to be getting signed, and this must be added in there as well. Donovan Dent is also planning to enter the transfer portal, but he is going to be having the do not contact tag while he's in the transfer portal. I think many of us know what this means. Gonzaga is out there on the hunt for a guard because Mario Saint-Sapri decided to go back to Spain for Donovan Dent. He came out of retirement right after Gonzaga lost their guard. I am right now putting 2 to 2 together. I think that it's fair to assume that this is going to be happening. This happened right around about like 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 Eastern on Friday, so it appears as though the Donovan Dent to Gonzaga sort of rumors are coming to light as well. This is just right now the tip of the iceberg. We're going to talk more about this with our good friend in Ben Stevens, who does amazing amazing work over here at VSIN. We're going to take a look at these court cases and so much more with him on the flip side right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now a part of the VSIN family podcast. Side edge this college basketball season? Well, VSiN experts use CBB Analytics, the most comprehensive college basketball analytics platform in the world. See injury impact, on and off data, clutch time performance metrics, first versus second half splits, and so much more. Utilize the promo code of VSIN, that is VSIN, to get $30 off and find your betting edge over at cbbanalytics.com. That is cbbanalytics, all one word.com. For anyone that is new to VSIN, well, I wish you a friendly hello. This is an attention to anyone that is new to VSIN because you're able to get some free stuff with our daily newsletter. It's a great way to catch up on everything that's happening in the sports betting world. It's delivered straight to your inbox every single morning. VSIN's newsletter offers picks, data, strategies for the day's betting menu, and so much more. Sign up for free today over at VSIN.com/newsletter. That's VSIN.com/newsletter, and start receiving your free newsletter tomorrow morning. That is VSIN.com/newsletter. Stay ahead of the game and bet smarter with VSIN. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. It's always great to be joined by this man, as we've got Ben Stevens aboard. He does such great work here at VSiN with so much of our weekend betting shows, Live Bet Saturday, Live Bet Sunday. I know that he's done a lot of fill-in work here throughout the summer as well, so he has been a man that has been very, very flexible with his schedule. He does a tremendous job looking at all things college sports. He always does a great job on the front of college basketball. I know that he is doing his darndest to get set for what is going to be an amazing college football season as well. You're able to follow him on the old Twitter/X at Ben Scott Stevens all together. And Ben, it's always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much.
Greg, great to be here as always, man. Always enjoyed chopping it up with you.
Absolutely, I do as well. And typically this time of year, super late July into early August, we're just starting to be able to take a look at these teams, maybe come up with some way too early projections for conferences and everything like that. And right now, we're not doing a lot of that because we've got a whole bunch of guys trying for eligibility. And just how do you take a look at the landscape of college basketball right now? Because it's, in my opinion, too early to be taking a look at some of these teams in the Big Ten and the SEC, because if Jackson Kaler gets eligibility for Michigan State, for example, like Braden Carrington, I know that he's been practicing with Wisconsin. Those are big pieces that really help those teams out in just the Big Ten alone, let alone all these other conferences that have so many guys that are trying for a fifth year themselves.
Yeah, it's a really interesting time, Greg, to your point, because if we have followed anything here in terms of what the NCAA's rules, guidelines, legislation has been and how it holds up in the court of law, it has not been a very successful run for the NCAA. And although some of this feels like it's a little bit fanatical at this time or very much hypothetical in how it is presented, there's a really good chance that in a few months, it could take a few months, but maybe by September or by the time practice really gets underway for a new college basketball season in early October, these lawsuits could be no longer pending. There could be a judgment in these 5-for-5 cases that we are seeing all around the country. There are 45 guys listed, including Jackson Kohler, who you mentioned for Michigan State, 45 guys listed as a part of this suit in California that would have sweeping ramifications around the country in college basketball. I don't necessarily agree with it. I hope the judges do not grant that additional eligibility for these guys that played collegiately under a certain set of rules that were readily available and known during their collegiate careers. But there's a really good chance that the judicial system has looked at everything the NCAA has had in terms of its regulations in the past 5 years, especially, and ruled against it. And it just has a terrible record of holding up in court. So I might disagree with it. You might have some questions about it. Whatever your stance is, it could dramatically swing things for college basketball here in the next few weeks, few months. We're not entirely sure what that timeline looks like.
Yep, it is going to be really interesting to look at. And how do you take a look at some of these teams that might be trying to sign a guy late? Because right now the rumors are Donovan Dent perhaps looking into Gonzaga. That's a big reason why he went out of retirement, and he's part of the California lawsuit that is pending as we're doing this right now. I'm hearing some rumors of someone like a Duke Brandon going on over to Oregon. We'll see if that actually happens or not. But I think that those are cases where maybe those teams get a little bit overhyped rather than, say, a Xavier, where they get back Philip Borovichinen, who was in the program last year. He was practicing with the team, so there's no love lost there with regards to chemistry. Meanwhile, we're going to try to see if some of these fifth-year guys that sign with a new school can be able to latch on late and sign in August. And I mean, the way that things might shape out, they might be signing in September and October at this point.
Yeah, Greg, we know that the collegiate athletic model, whether it's football, basketball, whatever sport basically that you have, is really started to follow a professional model. And when I say professional model, there is an idea that cuts might have to be made. People might have to be released from rosters and scholarships and whatever their NIL deal or rev share deal is with their specific university program or institution. Because, for instance, again, Jackson Kohler, as our example, a well-known name in college basketball, a part of the front court for Tom Izzo the past 4 years in East Lansing, one of those 45 guys in that California lawsuit. Michigan State currently, although I think would welcome back Kohler's impact on the actual hardwood, has 15 guys on its roster. That is the 15-player roster limit currently in college hoops. So let's say in a world that lawsuit works for those 45 defendants or the 45 guys that are suing the NCAA over these eligibility constrictions. Let's say that those guys now have an additional year of eligibility. Would these teams welcome them back with open arms as they have constructed their roster in one way of thinking and now would have to operate in a completely different realm? Would those guys like a Jackson Kohler or others who then would have availability be very hot commodities in whatever a transfer portal market would look like, if even the transfer portal, if you could enter at that time? I'm not even entirely sure. There are so many unknowns from that perspective that it is really hard to handicap, but it's really hard to think about what this finite picture is right here, right now. I think you can look at the preseason projections for a lot of these teams around college basketball that we had after the NCAA tournament came to a close and after the transfer portal whirlwind that followed the end of a college basketball season, and say that's what that roster is going to look like for 26, 27, but it could completely be thrown out of whack. I really will be interested to see if these guys, and it's a large if they are granted more eligibility, how the best programs and the best coaches around the country kind of deal with them. Have they already written them off and said, hey, we're focused on the future, or will they welcome them back with open arms?
Yep, it's going to be so interesting to take a look at that because there are some teams like, I know Wisconsin has left one roster spot open. That's why Braden Carrington is still with them. So if they welcome him back, that's nobody that's kicked off the roster. That's some experience. He's been working out with them. And I think that those are the teams that have really done the best job of planning. And if this all comes through, I think that they're going to be the biggest beneficiaries because unlike a team like a Michigan State, they don't have to kick someone off. They don't have to rock the boat with the locker room. And I think that these teams that left one, maybe even two roster spots open are going to be the biggest beneficiaries.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And that's just being smart in today's current landscape of college basketball. Greg Gard has shown his adaptation in terms of what this all looks like. Wisconsin recruiting in a way that we haven't seen the Badgers in quite some time, but I think it's with an eye toward the future and at least having that understanding. If you're looking at your roster that could be up to 15 people and you have 14 guys that you feel pretty comfortable with right now, you kind of allow yourself that wiggle room and some of that adaptability and versatility. If, for instance, somebody like Braden Carrington is added that additional year of eligibility, where now you have an impact guy as your 15th guy. And if it doesn't work out, okay, you add somebody to the roster that helps with practices and the formations and everything you need to do in getting ready for a season, but he's probably not part of your regular rotation.
Yep, I think that is so well said by you, and it's such an interesting dynamic right now in college basketball. As our good friend Ben Stevens says, amazing work over here at VSIN. He's joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, and we're taking a look at a lot of these guys that are fifth-year guys, what have you, and I want to go a little bit further as well because this is something that I talked about on the podcast too. I look at just the position itself, and I think that if you have a big man, like I was talking about Duke Brandon, perhaps going to Oregon, I think that would be a much easier fit than, say, a guard as well, because I just feel like we've seen in the past these guards that try to latch on late with the team. I mean, this is back when they were signing in like June after withdrawing from the NBA draft, what have you. They seem to have much more difficulty rather than a big man where the big man doesn't have as much with regards to ball in his hands, trying to run the offense. They just need to focus on getting boards and posting up. Whereas a guard, I think that there would be a lot for them to learn in a short amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely so. It's a really good point too, Greg. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit more in college basketball. The importance of the front court. Great guard play, of course, can win in the month of March, but how these rosters have been constructed, although no longer there in Ann Arbor, that was really the prototype that Dusty May used. You look at what Florida is bringing back, and sometimes the greatest win is the retention of having the guys on your roster. It's not about the new guys. It's the guys that you know are those known commodities, and you are not dealing with the uncertainty that is basically commonplace place now in college basketball. I think we all expect Florida to be the top-ranked team in the country when the preseason AP poll comes out early in the fall, and a lot of that has been through the front court. The fact that Thomas Houck, that Alex Condon, that Ruben Chinyelu are all back. You have that known front court for Todd Golden, of course, with the guards and the backcourt that we have seen, led by Boogie Flynn at the point guard spot, but you have those known commodities in the front court and that evolution in college basketball where their efficiency, their length, their athleticism, but now their ability to step out, shoot the three, knock down the three, and play at those high tempo paces. It's really what college basketball has become. So I think the importance or the added value that is placed now on the front court in college hoops is a very different game and how it is constructed, even than in the last 5-6 years. And I think, Greg, that's been a really interesting thing to pay attention to. Of course, as most people watch college basketball, it is for March Madness. It is for the NCAA tournament. And there has been a lack of upsets, the lack of Cinderella the last few years, with the best teams and the most elite teams in the country really kind of showing that ilk when by the time we get to March and early April. Well, I think it's a lot of those teams revolutionizing the way they play, especially on the offensive end, with the efficiency, mirroring what we see in the NBA with big guys that can step out and shoot the three. And when your offense is operating at such a high rate in terms of those efficiency numbers on the offensive side of the floor, in terms of what that 3-point rate could look like, it just leaves less room for those underdogs to pull off a stunning upset because of the style of play kind of being more of a meritocracy across the board.
Yep, and I think that it's going to be interesting to see that in the Big Ten, because I felt like the Big Ten had so many teams that were able to do a good job of mastering that. With Michigan State, obviously Michigan last season, Illinois, you just go down the list. They were able to do a rock-solid job, and since we last chatted a few weeks ago, we have seen a little bit more with Michigan because LJ Kaysen, he leaves and he goes to Miami. Well, I'm starting to feel very bullish about Miami, by the way. Sure. That's a great ad for them, but how do you take a look at this Michigan team? Because I still think that there's a very clear tier one here in the Big Ten. I think it's Michigan, Michigan State, and Illinois. But now that they lose Kaysen, now that you've got Dusty May moving to the NBA, a Michigan team that I thought could perhaps be that top team in the Big Ten in the preseason, I now had some question marks, especially with Illinois having so much roster retention, along with Michigan State having a guy like a Jeremy Fears who ran the point so well for them last year.
Yeah, it's a really good point, Greg, about what Michigan brings back. Losing LJ Kaysen, if he even plays this upcoming season. Of course, when Dusty May was still there was conversation that he would be redshirted for the upcoming year because of the injury that he suffered late in 2025-26. What Jay Lucas is building in Coral Gables for this Canes basketball program is awesome, and I think he is one of the bright young coaches in this sport. In terms of what the Wolverines will bring back in Ann Arbor, again, Greg, I think it's interesting when you look at maybe some of these way too early rankings and you look at the teams that made deep runs a year ago, including the Maize and Blue winning a national championship. There's a lot of known commodities either on those rosters year over year, season over season, or guys, of course, that have played at the highest levels of the sport and now have transferred in. For instance, one of the biggest things that Mike Boynton was able to do was to retain J.P. Estrella coming from Tennessee, one of those big men in the ilk of how Dusty May has built the program. Mustafa Cham coming from Cincinnati as well. Those guys are still there, and you go through the rest of the starting five with Elliot Cadeau and Trey McKinney, who everybody expects to be even more on the up and up after a sensational March Madness run for this Michigan team. You know a lot of those names. You know a lot of those faces. Illinois is basically the exact same. They had Stefan Vox from Providence, but you have Andrei Stojakovic, David Mirkovic, and Tomislav Ivasic all back. Names that you know, including Zvonimir Ivasic and Jake Davis, who were, of course, big components of this roster a season ago. You look at UConn, who's probably going to be a top 5 team. Of course, keeping Braylon Mullins in college for Dan Hurley was a ginormous win. But Silas Demery, the man who can do it all, he is back as well. So it's really interesting when we talk about all of these uncertain things, and yet we are going to discuss the best teams in the sport, or the teams that we expect to have those highest expectations year over year and early for 2026-27. It's a lot of known commodities. It's a lot of names and faces that we have either seen in that specific program or playing at the highest levels, at those high major levels that we all know, and we know what their contributions at least should look like for this next program.
Yep, we should know exactly what we're going to be getting there, and that's the nice thing with this day and age in college basketball. Even if a guy is going from a low major to a high major, you at the very least have a little bit of a sample size, whereas with these international guys, with these guys that are freshmen as well, it's a little bit of a question mark. We know what we're going to be getting out of these schools, and Ben, you're a Big Ten guy, much like myself, and I had Brian Butch on the program about a week or two ago, and I want to get your thoughts on this team because I do feel like the Big Ten has a lot more depth than a lot of people give it credit for, and I want to get your thoughts on Minnesota because for Minnesota, a lot of people are probably going to be picking them towards the bottom of the conference. A lot of people are going to think, oh, it's Minnesota. When's the last time they've really been great at basketball? But I really think this might be an NCAA tournament team. I love what Nico Medved is as a coach. I felt like they fought really hard last season, and the fact that they actually played in a postseason tournament, we saw so many teams like Nebraska, Central Florida go from the crown to the NCAA tournament. I think this is a team that is very much a candidate for that, especially if Jalen Crocker-Johnson is fully healthy for this team.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I have a full level of belief, Greg, in Nico Medved and what he does as a basketball coach, the success that he has had at every single stop he has been on. And I know that at his alma mater for this Minnesota team in 2026-27, he is going to start to reap in some of that success. It's so funny you mentioned last year for this Gophers team, they were decimated by injury. A lot of times, even throughout the Big Ten season, they were playing 6-7 guy rotations and not maybe the 6 or 7 guys that Nico Medved would most like to have out there. And yet they found success. And when you have JCJ, follow him from Colorado State to the Twin Cities and kind of be that leader and add additional wrinkles to his game, like at the outside shot in 2025-26, you would only expect even more improvement the next season. Now you're looking at this Minnesota team and you might be saying to yourselves, they were 3 games under 500, but they were only 8-12 in Big Ten regular season play. And they had won 5 of their last 7. Greg, there was a 7-game losing skid for Minnesota that when you looked at a good chunk of those games, really outside of getting blown out by Nebraska at home in the barn, but I even think they were ahead of that game at the half or at least early in the second. We're talking about multiple overtime losses and every other game decided by 10 points or fewer. This was a Minnesota team that was close and had the highest assist to field goal rate in the country a season ago. Of their made field goals, they assisted on 71% of them. I think you are going to see Nico Medved starting to lay that groundwork and foundation and put out those seeds to have some more success for this Gophers team moving forward. The Barn is one of the great venues in the Big Ten, and I really think that Nico Medved is going to make a case as one of the upper echelon coaches in the Big Ten, putting that on full display this next season.
Yep, right there with you. That's one of those teams where as I do my research more and more, the more that I just absolutely love them, the more that I think that they're going to be taking off. And I'll close it up with this. Is there a team or two out there? It could be the Big Ten, the Big East. Heck, it could be the Patriot League. It could be any of the 366 Division I teams. But is there a team or two that just the more that you do your research, it can be based on what we've seen here over the last few weeks with the court cases as well, because that's obviously had a pretty seismic shift with a lot of these rosters. But is there a team or two that all of a sudden now you're starting to feel just a little bit better about them than you did at the beginning of the offseason?
Yeah, there's a couple of those, Greg. I think in just the national landscape of a team that I would expect to be Final Four or Elite 8 caliber this upcoming season, I think it's hard to make the case that anybody had a better offseason than Sean Miller in Austin. To bring back Modest Vukatitis back as your big man as we kind of focus on that front court in the sport, to add one of the best interior defenders and a guy who could score around the rim in David Punch. This Longhorns team is going to be really, really good into 2026-27. And there's 2 teams I would also mention within the Big Ten that I really think this is kind of make or break years for their head coach, for the direction of this program. Both happen to reside in Los Angeles. I think UCLA has to be really, really good this season. To add Nikola Kusturica, I think was huge, as we are going to probably be looking at maybe the first overall pick in the 2028 NBA draft. He is young. He has to be playing collegiate basketball for the next 2 years in Westwood, or at least the next 2 years in total. I think that was a missing piece for a UCLA team that, despite losing Donovan Dent, brings back so much experience from last season, and a starting 5 that will have that experience with, I think, the NBA upside of a Kusturica that, of course, I think makes an immediate impact. The other would be what Eric Musselman is building at the other LA team with USC. A lot of returning talent for the Trojans, and of course, the addition of Eric Rybo, the big man from UConn. This is a team in SC that I think this has to be the year, Greg, where we see Eric Musselman elevate the Trojans. We know how good he is at building rosters, but will we see the performances out there for a USC team that I think, Greg, if they were to finish outside of, we'll call it the top half of the Big Ten, but I would even say like the top 6 and maybe even in that triple bye category to be one of the 4 top seeds in the Big Ten conference as you get ready for that Big Ten tournament in the middle of March. If USC is going to be outside of that consideration, or at least where they are in terms of standing and result in conference, I would consider something having gone amiss for the Trojans in 2026-27. Doesn't mean they could not be a 6 seed in the tournament, one of probably the 11 or 12 Big Ten teams that will make the field this upcoming year. But I just mean in terms of really being in that status contending category for this USC program moving forward. It's a really big year, in my estimation, for Eric Musselman to get the Muss Bus on the right track in LA.
Yep, I'm right there with you. Those Los Angeles teams, it's going to be big for them. We've seen the West Coast teams have issues in the Big Ten. Really, all those former Pac-12 teams other than Arizona. Things are going great for Arizona, but rest of them, they've fallen on some tough times. So we'll see if they're going to be able to bust through in year number 3 in their respective conferences. And we always bust through with a great chat with you, my friend. Ben, you're doing such great work here at VSIN, especially with our weekend coverage. I know that you're getting set for college football right now and so much more.
Yeah.
So love the good people at home. Know it's all on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
Yeah, at Ben Scott Stevens on Twitter, BS Stevens on Instagram, all of that good stuff. Big Ten Ben on TikTok, if that's your jam as well. And Greg, we'll keep it rolling on Live Bet throughout the weekend. This upcoming weekend on VSiN, I am both on Saturday and hosting on Sunday night as well, where we'll be doing a lot of football talk, NFL previews, win totals that I love. And of course, that will be the case in college football as well, as we have media days playing out collegiately for college football entering a new year and so much to unpack. I appreciate you, my man, always having me on and enjoy chopping it up with you.
Oh, it is always great to be able to get Ben aboard. He does such a great job on the college sports landscapes, does such a great job with our live betting shows here at VSiN, and so much more. So big thanks to Ben for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. And if you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one or two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, large CM, they mean does not matter. So, as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is Vine and Apple Podcast Review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it's very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. We have got a lot that's going on in college basketball right now. I'm going to continue to do my work with the conference preview podcast. You guys got the Missouri Valley Conference yesterday. I'm anticipating the MEAC being done within the next 48 to 72 hours as well. We'll probably take a little bit of a pause with some of these conference preview podcasts because we've got a lot of wild and craziness. Fortunately, the MEAC probably not going to be too impacted by that. The Northeast Conference, I plan on doing that probably within the next week or so. We should be good there, but certainly we've got a lot of hoopla happening in college basketball, and I'll keep you guys up to date for it all to make this the greatest college basketball season ever. And then once we get back into the regular season, picks and analysis on every single game, every single day. So appreciate tuning in today, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.